Greetings and salutations, creature lovers. This is Mr. Venom welcoming you to No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts, episode number 48. Before I introduce this month's movie, let's go ahead and introduce my co-host. Coming to us first from the main show, No More Room in Hell, it is Mr. Derek B. How you doing, Derek?
Hey, yo, I'm ready to talk about some Majo Gordon. He used to be a bad guy.
And also coming to us from Fresh Cuts and the Horror Countdown podcast, it is Mr. Don Anelli. How you doing, Don?
Yeah, doing good. Always happy to be here.
All right, so folks, for this month, it was my pick, and I decided to do something that I literally haven't watched in almost 50 years. This particular movie this month, I actually got to see this at the drive-in all the way back in 1977. This was actually the B movie to Empire of the Ants. So I was actually able to watch Empire of the Ants and, of course, The Food of the Gods on the same night with my parents. So basically, 7-year-old Mr. Venom just sitting in the back seat, absolutely enthralled with all of these giant creatures. And obviously, we've already talked about Empire of the Ants on this show. So now it's time to talk Food of the Gods. So, before we get into it, let's go ahead and play the trailer. Be right back.
More frightening than his War of the Worlds. More imaginative than his Time Machine. Now, H.G. Wells' masterpiece of science fiction, The Food of the Gods. The terrifying tale of man fighting for his life against an ecology gone berserk. This is the last chance for an unsuspecting world against harmless animals and insects made huge and vicious by the food of the gods. Marjo Gortner. Pamela Franklin, Ralph Meeker, Ida Lupino, H.G. Wells' The Food of the Gods for a Taste of Hell. Rated PG.
All right, folks, that was the trailer for The Food of the Gods, coming to us from 1976. This movie's rated PG, coming in at 1 hour and 28 minutes. Our synopsis is as follows. A group of friends travel to a remote Canadian island to hunt, only to be attacked by giant killer animals which have populated the area. Now, this one goes down as what, just a great B movie, both because of its director and its producer, who are both legendary. Of course, our director is Bert I. Gordon. He is also the writer of he wrote the screenplay, which of course is based on the book, The Food of the Gods, and how it came to be, how it came to Earth, excuse me. The Food of the Gods and How It Came to Earth is the name of the novel. and written, of course, by the great H.G. Wells. And then our producer on this one is, of course, the great Samuel Z. Arkoff, which, of course, fans of his lovingly call him Sam Zarkoff, as I've always called him my whole life. So when I see Bert I. Gordon, H.G. Wells, and Sam Zarkoff together, my friends, my nipples get hard. And this movie is no different. Now, as I said, I watched this movie way back in 1977 and had never given it a second watch until this week. So that's what, 49 years in the making for my second watch. So this was basically a first time watch. So obviously, over the years, seeing clips of the movie over and over again, it always stayed familiar with me. So let's go ahead and get into our general thoughts. So why don't we go ahead and bring Don in here first? And Don, give me a little something about your general thoughts on Food of the Gods.
So this is my second time watch of the film as well. I think I first heard about it like right around the time that I was kind of getting into Bert's earlier films. I knew that I had seen, stuff from like the 50s and 60s. I know I'd seen them before this, and then it was just kind of like exploring his filmography and then looking at some of the other stuff he's done that I kind of became aware of this one. Probably saw it somewhere between 2000-ish or so. The exact dates are kind of a lost cause on my end, but yeah, I hadn't seen it since then either. So not to the degree of you from opening night, but yeah, it was another one that I'd seen earlier and kind of not necessarily wanted or needed a refresher course, but kind of glad I got one. I still enjoy it. Again, this is all pretty much predicated on the creature attacks, which I do like that there's a mix between the two, although I'll come back to that in a little bit. We do get, a variety of methods for the creature attacks. We get normal creatures in miniature sets just blown up to kaiju size proportions, or not necessarily like kaiju size, but comparatively speaking, like the amount of animals that we get are, blown up to, giant size. Not to the degree like his earlier film, Beginning of the End, but definitely some kind of mix between the two, because they're human sized, rats and mice, and we do get like a killer bee attack in here, which is kind of fun. So yeah, we get those kinds of scenes, and then we get human size proportion models, kind of similar to what he did in Empire of the Ants, which I liked in Empire because they did a little bit more. Here, they just kind of seem to, shake the head around a little, and it kind of makes them look a little cheesier when you see them kind of screaming in agony, but the head's not really doing anything. So it kind of lessens the impact, but it's still the same principle, and it comes off well enough in that regard. Setup is nothing special, but at least it's workable enough to do what it needs to do. We get right in on it. I mean, I think the first incident is like maybe 10 minutes in. So yeah, we get right in on the action, which is a fun aspect. I love some of the interplay that we get here at the beginning. The He-Man kind of, Marjoe Gortner's character, mixing it up against, some of these other, not, I wouldn't call them stupid, but maybe not necessarily like in survivalist types that don't really know what's going on. So you get some of his macho interactions with them kind of coming across really well. The one thing that I do dislike about this is that I always thought there was more animals in here, and yeah, it basically kind of just devolves into just the horde of rats, which again we can talk about later on, but I recall that there being more animals that attack them, and this one here, it kind of disappointed me that there wasn't as many. It's just basically the one. So I was kind of disappointed on that end because we don't get as many as there could have been. I mean, yes, we get the giant bee, and there's instances where the giant chicken, which could have been interesting, but it doesn't really feature as prominently as the rats do. I would say it's disappointing. You know, it's a bad thing, but it is a little disappointing that that's the case. But yeah, that's kind of the one thing that stuck out with me. And the other thing for me is that I'm not as big a fan of the ending as I thought I was. I remember really liking the ending and enjoying the downbeat coda that we get, but this time around, it kind of just dragged on, and I wouldn't say that it's detrimental. It's fun. Again, it's kind of fast moving, and it really kind of gets to the point really quickly. But yeah, the ending kind of drags on, and it kind of takes forever to get to this downbeat ending. But other than that, I don't really have too many issues with it. And I think a lot of mileage on this is going to be dependent on your tolerance for the effects in here because they're cheesy to a degree, which I like. But I don't know if some are going to, favor that kind of approach over some more realistic stuff. Really know what else I can say other than, delving into spoilers. So I guess back to you.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and come in here next and talk about this movie that I actually really, really enjoy. This is not a top tier creature feature by any stretch. I can't really call anything by Bert I. Gordon top notch necessarily, though they're all enjoyable to a degree. Absolutely. One thing that I had forgotten about is the fact that Pamela Franklin makes an appearance in this movie. Not only is she our main female star, this is her final film. She actually does continue acting, but all she did was television for like a good 20-25 years after this. But this was her last feature film, which I was kind of surprised about. Now, the reason I'm bringing up Pamela Franklin is because I absolutely adore this woman. She is literally in two of my favorite haunted house movies of all time. One of them being my absolute favorite haunted house movie of all time, which would be 1961's The Innocents, which was her first movie. I think she was about 11 or 12, and she actually plays Flora in that movie. And what's funny is that her name was Flora in The Innocents and Florence in Legend of Hell House. Are these the same people? Is this a shared universe? I wonder. Anyway, like I said, because of Pamela Franklin being in those two movies, I absolutely adore her. She's endlessly adorable. I mean, the black hair, blue eyes has always kind of been a weakness of mine. And yeah, she absolutely pulls it off. I wouldn't call this one of her better roles. I would definitely put Legend of Hell House, especially Legend of Hell House, I would put above this one just because she plays that medium who, if I remember correctly, actually has sex with a ghost, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
so exactly. So a very interesting character. And of course, as Flora, just a great, great performance in her very first film. Obviously, our main stars are all fine. Marjoe Gortner is great as our main character, Morgan, our football star, if you will. And Ida Lupina, another classic actress in her final film role as Mrs. Skinner. This was actually her final movie as well. So you got a nice little lineage here of people ending their careers with Bert I. Gordon. I like that.
Ralph Meeker.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I really enjoyed this movie this time around. I fully agree with Don that some of the effects are questionable. I'm kind of split down the middle in the sense that I like everything they did with the rats. I like what they did with the chicken and the rooster. I'm not a big fan of what they did with the wasps, and they call them wasps. Yeah, for some reason they call them wasps in the movie, but didn't they look like mosquitoes? Like, to me, they look like giant mosquitoes. I don't know.
I'd have to go back. I thought they were bees.
No, yeah, I mean, they call them wasps in the movie, but wasps look like giant bees, and these things looked much skinnier, more like a mosquito. I couldn't quite tell where their stinger was, because obviously with a wasp and a bee, the stinger is, on their butt, whereas with a mosquito, it's their proboscis, their nose. So I was trying to like freeze frame multiple times to see where the stinger was, but it was just really hard to tell because the effect with the wasps was basically superimposed. They took, I don't even know if these were real wasps or prop wasps, but they basically just superimposed them over the film footage. And it just, I don't know, whenever films do that, I'm just not the biggest fan of it. It almost never looks right.
Like, especially when you watch an HD copy of the movie where it's
Oh,
all
yeah.
cleaned up and shit, it's like even worse.
I couldn't imagine a 4K of this. It would probably look awful, that effect. But because the effect with the rats and the chickens kind of makes up for it, I'm okay with it. I'll take one bad series of effects considering they give us a couple of other series of really good effects. And the rats, I mean, the rat attacks I thought looked great. Like the way that they were editing, especially in the very first attack where the rats are attacking a vehicle, a car. The shots of the real rats on top of the toy car and then interplaying that with the prop rats on the real car. I thought that was just great. Especially for 1976 for a Bert I. Gordon movie. Like I was very impressed with those effects in particular. I will admit that I'm right there with Don on the ending. It's a little bit more of a downer. I mean, I guess the only real happy ending is that Morgan and Lorna get to go have sex now. For some reason, Lorna gets horny at the weirdest time, like right when all the shit goes down. She literally says to Morgan, I want to make love to you. Like, what? Where the hell did that come out of? But
And he's like, hey, baby.
Oh, yeah, he's not going to argue. I mean, it's adorable Pamela Franklin. So, yeah. I mean, that's really the only happy ending I see at the end because so many people are killed. And, ultimately, we only get, 4 survivors out of the almost dozen cast in this movie. So
I stopped drinking milk after this movie.
Yeah, that final shot, that final epitaph scene. Yeah, it definitely makes you scared of milk. Not that human adults should be drinking milk anyway, but whatever. If you like it, you like it. But yeah, I gotta say, like I said, despite some of the lesser than great effects, despite some of the maybe not great line deliveries that we get in this one, I have a thoroughly good time with it. Like I said, this is absolutely not top tier creature feature. This isn't them by any stretch of the imagination or Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. I mean, this is just a solid B tier creature feature that I actually like a lot more than I remembered liking it as a kid. So I'm actually very happy. Like I said, this one just kind of popped into my head recently. I knew that we wanted to have a quick turnaround for this episode. So since I had it kind of in the memory banks, I'm like, screw it. Let's go ahead and do Food of the Gods. And I'm actually very happy that we got to do it because I had an absolute great time watching it this time around. So with that said, let me go ahead and turn the mic over to Mr. Derek B and get Derek's general thoughts on the Food of the Gods.
Yeah, Pamela Franklin, man. I actually was watching the commentary that's on the Kino Cult Blu-ray release of this. It's done by the late Lee Gambin and John Harrison, who wrote actually the book about all the films of Marjoe Gortner. So that was kind of a cool commentary to listen to.
Nice.
The release is actually dedicated to Lee. If you don't know Lee Gambin, he wrote the book Massacre Thy Nature, which is a book about like the eco horror. It's a really cool book. Actually uses the cover of frogs as the cover art, which I any AIP fucking poster art from this era, legendary. And the Food of the Gods was probably I seen the poster art fucking before I actually ever seen the movie. It's drawn by Drew Struzan, the legendary artist who just actually recently passed away recently.
Mm-hmm.
Done a lot of awesome posters in his heyday: Star Wars, Harry Potter,
Blade Runner.
Blade Runner. Yeah, like it's like legendary. And I haven't actually seen this movie. I actually first watched this. I think it was either my first or my second 31 Days of Horror on YouTube, because I had like the old Scream Factory release with this and Frogs when they did their double features. Yeah, and this is actually maybe my third or fourth time watching it because I actually do enjoy this movie quite a bit. It's just a quick like comfort food type movie. I love like these stories. It mixes like giant monster movie with like eco nature, runs amok in a way where it's fucking like a blender of those two genres. I have fun with it for what it is. Like I agree with Venom the Wasp. effects are probably my least favorite.
Mm.
And actually, one of my favorite effects that we didn't even talk about is the little baby grubs.
Yeah.
I love those things. Those scare me more than fucking anything. Anything worm related, like God, forbid whenever we do fucking squirm on this podcast. That movie fucking terrified me as a kid.
Yeah, you and Mrs. Venom have the same fear. She absolutely hates creepy crawlies.
Yeah, fucking like when all those worms in that house in that movie, I'm like, fuck that. I wouldn't go in there. Fuck that.
Oh, that
shit.
scene where they're coming out of that guy's face. Yeah, I lose it.
Yeah, fuck yeah. That'll be a fun one to do sometime.
Oh, yeah.
Good old Jeff Lieberman. Speaking of directors, I love the little puppet rat heads. They're kind of cute in a way when they're devouring people. They look cute, you know, like the little. You can tell they're puppets, but it still works for the scenes that they use them in, especially with that added like blood and ketchup or whatever the fuck they use for blood in this movie. Fun fact I found out during the commentary: Pamela Franklin was actually pregnant during the making of this movie. She actually hid her pregnancy, which is kind of weird because there's actually a pregnant character in this movie, played by Belinda Belaski, who would later go on to be in like Piranha, Gremlins, The Howling. Did a few movies with Joe Dante, that lady. It's actually also interesting because this isn't Bert I. Gordon's first adaptation of the source material, because Village of the Giants is also based on the same book.
That's right.
He took actually portions of that novel and made two different movies out of it, which I actually give a lot of credit where credit is due. He made two different versions from the same source material, but from different aspects of that said novel, because this actually is a portion of the novel. It's not really a big portion, but it's actually kind of cool how they expanded on it and made it more like of the time that this movie takes place in, 1976, which I do give big props for that aspect of the movie. Yeah, I love this movie. When I say it's like a top tier, probably not, but if you have a few like fucking joints in you could do much worse.
Oh, absolutely. And let's talk about the book a little bit. Just real briefly, this movie, The Food of the Gods, is actually only based on the first 25% of the book, Food of the Gods, and how it came to Earth. Because obviously this movie is a very isolated story. It's just kind of this isolated island, you know, off the coast of Canada. Whereas the book, it expands upon that, and it becomes a little bit more of a global issue in the novel. So
the major part of it's like the kids becoming giants, which the Village of the Giants part comes
exactly.
into play.
Yep,
Yeah,
big time. so that's also cool, and also the fact that they kind of changed the name of the stuff. The actual chemical in the book, oh god, it's got let me see if I can pronounce this, Heracleophobia. Also known as boom food. They called it boom food in the novel, but here the people who found it, Mr. and Mrs. Skinner, actually call it Food of the Gods, and they actually have all the containers with the abbreviation FOTG on all the jars and buckets that they have. So they actually called it Food of the Gods, which I kind of liked. I've never actually read the novel, so I'm not sure if it was actually called Food of the Gods in the novel or if anybody called it that. But in my research, I found that they called it boom food, kind of like a slang term for it. I like that. Rather than trying to fit an entire novel into one movie, which, then you end up with things like Dune, where, they got to split it up into 3 goddamn movies because the novel's so damn long. You got to split it up into 3 movies. And yes, Dune 3 is coming out later this year, but that's a story for another podcast. But the fact that just Bert I. Gordon, took this one piece of the story, this isolated part of the story, and put together a very watchable movie. Like I said, I'm not going to call this an A+ movie by any stretch of the imagination, but I think if you're a fan of creature features, especially of this era of the 60s and 70s, I don't think there's any reason not to enjoy this one. Even the cheesy parts of it are at least fun to watch and kind of laugh at ultimately. And then we get, Jack, who's one of the biggest assholes around and very proud of it, apparently. Just at every turn, just making himself the human antagonist of this story, just pissing off everyone left and right, only thinking about the money. Of course, in stories like this, there's always going to be the one person who, sees dollar signs when they see something like this. Obviously,
you wiping your fucking ass with $100 bills.
Yeah. So funny. Without thinking about the repercussions of, because how are you going to control which animals get this stuff? Because ultimately it could spread through the water, the groundwater. It could spread through, probably could spread through feces ultimately. I mean, if a giant rat eats something and poops and then a fly comes along and lands on that
God,
what do you think's going to happen to the fly? Exactly.
Goldblum.
Yeah. This another Goldblum. So these characters like this are always, funny, and it's always fun to watch them get their comeuppance, which of course Jack eventually does. But I like that this is a simple story too. It's not they don't really get into the science because this wasn't or at least it doesn't. They don't imply that it was something that was man-made. Yes, this could have been a toxic waste situation. It could have been an experiment that got just thrown away or whatever. But since they come at it from the angle of, Mr. and Mrs. Skinner found it bubbling out of the ground, decided to mix it with their chicken feed, and suddenly they've got, 8-foot chickens and a 9-foot rooster, which actually gives us a mildly interesting scene when Morgan first gets to the Skinner farm and goes into the chicken coop and is attacked by a giant rooster. I found it kind of funny that none of the hens, none of the female chickens bothered him. It was just the rooster, which is kind of interesting. The giant chickens didn't seem to care about him. He wasn't food to them, apparently. So, there you go. But yeah, like I said, very simple story. It's just, the story of this football team who's out, or, members of a football team who are out on a hunt. And of course, they run into this situation with giant animals. And it just goes from there, leading to a final confrontation at the Skinner Ranch, where eventually Morgan and one of his partners blow up the dam. There's a dam very close to the Skinner Ranch, and they end up drowning them. Now, you might be wondering, hey, rats can swim, so why wouldn't these rats survive? Apparently, in this movie, the theory is that the rats are used to swimming when they're only 10, 11 ounces. But now that they're the size of a Volkswagen Bug, they're not going to be able to handle their weight. And thankfully, that theory does ring true, which was Morgan's theory, by the way. And yes, when they break the dam, they flood the area and all the rats end up getting killed, except for the one white rat who, they have a final confrontation on the rooftop of the house. Now, for years, people accused this movie of actually killing rats because there's multiple scenes here where we see these guys shooting shotguns at the rats, and then we see the real rats with almost like a blood spray, and then they react very violently. Folks, not one rat was killed on this production. What you're seeing there is an air gun. They actually had a small air gun filled with red food coloring, to my knowledge, or some kind of non-toxic red paint. And they would spray the rats with it. And when they hit the rats would act violently. They would squirm, and because, they didn't know what the hell was going on. It's what the hell was that? You just shot me with, some kind of liquid.
Ooh, man.
Yeah, exactly. What the fuck, dude? So yeah, I think the effect looks great. It's very effective, especially because of the way that the rats react to the food coloring or the dye that's being shot at them. I think it's very effective. I mean, it almost makes you feel bad, especially if you actually like rats, which Mrs. Venom actually does. My wife adores rats. We actually had a couple of rats for a little while as pets here, which I hated because I'm not the biggest fan of rodents, but she loves them. So, happy wife, happy life, blah, blah, blah. So, like I said, I had an absolute blast with this. Just like Derek said, I had some herbal essences to go with it, and I had just a great time. We're talking sub 90 minutes, an hour and 28 minutes. Like Don said, we get to the action right away. I mean, it's within the first 10 minutes that one of the football players gets attacked by one of the wasps. and leaves a very bloated corpse, which is another pretty cool effect that we got. After that one guy was attacked by the wasps, his corpse is all bloated, his eyes are swollen shut. I thought it looked really cool for what it was.
The same guy who did the dead bodies on Frogs did the dead bodies on this movie.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, Frogs 1972, right? I think.
One of the early ones. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and hey, you never know. That might appear on this show one of these days. Actually, I can almost guarantee it. But that's a story for another day. So let's bring Derek in here again. Obviously, Derek, we've all kind of said that this wasn't really a top tier film. Now, Don has already talked about how he would have liked to have seen more creatures. What would you have liked to have seen in this to maybe improve it a little bit?
Well, I know a lot of like the actual, because I read the book years ago, and from one of my memories, the rats were really a major player in the story. It was more of the chickens, if I could remember correctly. Wow. So that would have been cool, but I guess knowing like Bert I. Gordon's effects history, rats are just easier to work with miniatures.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why they didn't really do the chickens a lot. Honestly, like I don't even know. Maybe add fucking more of those grubs just popping out, trying to eat the fucking pregnant lady. That would have been fucking nuts.
Especially because they didn't have to superimpose them; they actually made props, so it looked nice. You could definitely take that.
Rick Baker actually worked on this movie. It's like one of his early movies.
Very cool. Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome. Like I said, that just whenever they do the superimposing effect like they do with the wasp here, it always kind of irks me. I would have liked to have seen him maybe do a different creature, maybe like a different small creature, maybe not ants, because obviously, the following year we get the Great Empire of the Ants. But I definitely would have liked to have seen some different creatures in there, something that they could have made props for.
Which ironically, I watched earlier today, Empire of the Ants.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I got to revisit that one too. It's been well over a year since we did it, actually. So, And then of course there is a sequel to this movie, Food of the Gods 2, which does continue the story. So it doesn't necessarily pick up exactly where this one leaves off, but it does kind of continue the story from the novel. Not quite to the effect of, Village of the Giants by any stretch, but and honestly, I've never seen Food of the Gods Part 2. That's a kind of a guilty admission that I have to make. I've never seen the second one. I just never got around to watching it. I've never heard the greatest things about it, but it's still something I want to.
I didn't even know there was a sequel.
Yeah, there is a Food of the Gods 2 that I believe it came out in 88, if I remember correctly.
It comes with it's like called Food of the Gods Part 2.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, that's Part 2?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind then. I've actually seen that. I didn't even know it was a sequel. I just know it is Gnaw.
Nice. Okay. Was it any good? Should I watch it?
I saw it right around the time of this one, actually. I think I saw this one first.
Oh, this might be a future episode.
Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I saw that one first. I didn't even know that. The only way I just picked it up on a VHS and it was just called Gnaw. So I didn't even know it was Food of the Gods Part 2, or else I probably wouldn't have even watched it. The effects are better. I remember that because it's not Bert I. Gordon doing it.
That could be a reason to watch it then.
Yeah, but I don't have the strongest recollection of it because, like I said, I didn't even know it was until you guys said it. I have seen it as Gnaw, but I didn't know it was called Food of the Gods 2.
All right, gentlemen. I guess at this point, I will turn it over to you guys and see if you have any closing thoughts. So, Derek, any closing thoughts on Food of the Gods before we get out of here?
If you are a collector of these movies and you do own that old Scream Factory edition, I do suggest if you are a collector, the new Kino Called Blu-ray actually looks a lot better than that print that's on that Scream Factory from what I remember.
Nice.
That's actually one of the reasons why, it's the movie's on its own disc, doesn't have to share a movie, so that might have something to do with it. Yeah, I say check it out if you're a fan of this type of stuff. It's still I say watch it for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And same for me. I mean, this is an absolute recommend. If you're into, like I said, don't expect top tier A+ creature feature by any stretch. But if you're a fan of, nature run amok stories, giant creatures, I think this is essential viewing. Don, any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
You guys pretty much nailed it. Not really essential viewing, but it's definitely one for those that have a proclivity for the B tier, cheesy kind of creature feature, nature run amok kind of stuff. It's fun for what it is. It's not the best, but yeah, we've definitely covered far worse on here. So yeah, I wouldn't make it a priority to seek it out, but if you come across it, or you can find the Blu-ray for cheap, give it a shot. You may like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one last thing I wanted to say, kudos to Mrs. Skinner for taking out one of the rats with a meat cleaver. Obviously, it ended up taking her out at the exact same time, but just the image of the dead rat on top of Mrs. Skinner's body with the cleaver in its head, I thought was great. Very
fun fact.
Oh, go ahead.
Ida Lupino actually wrote her own death scene in this movie.
You're kidding. That's awesome. Wow. How many directors are going to trust an actress to do that? So, kudos to Bert I. Gordon for trusting her. But yeah, I love that scene. I think that's a great death scene for her, especially as that is the last time we see her on celluloid. I thought it was awesome. Kind of like the last time we see Ray Liotta on celluloid was him getting destroyed by Cocaine Bear. So yeah, there you go. All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for episode 48 of Creature Comforts. This was a quick one this month, as we did have a quick turnaround because I wanted to get back on our schedule. So I will definitely have this episode out before the end of the month. And the next picks will be, of course, or the next pick will be Derek's. I guess we will see you folks next month. So yeah, on behalf of Derek B and Don Anelli, this is Mr. Venom, thanking you all so much for joining us once again for No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts, episode 48. Let's say bye to the folks.
Later.
Got milk?
Oh God, in that final scene, oh man, the freeze frame on that kid just drinking milk, and we all know
looking
what's about
all
to
evil
happen.
and shit.
Oh, I loved it. Oh, what a great freeze frame. All right, folks, we'll see you next month. Take care.